Very good.
Yes.
Okay, so now please
So,
do introduce yourself and tell us where you are. And this is a 1 hour session where you're going to tell a story. It's relating to animals, by the way. And then we're going to resonate and discuss how the story might possibly relate to our own experience, our own imagination. So please go ahead.
very well. Can you all see me? Am I in the picture? You can hear me?
Yes.
All well? Good. My name is Nilguen Yalay, and I'm coming from New Zealand. I live on the South Island in New Zealand, and it's beautifully warm, sunny outside, and maybe afterwards I go for a swim. I've been a theater person for almost all my life, but when I came to New Zealand, I entered the therapeutic profession and became a therapist and worked for 35 years in Christchurch as a therapist. And about 4 years ago, I gave up my job and bought a little camper van, a little motorhome I call Gypsy Rose. And I travel through New Zealand and tell stories and love connecting with smaller communities and do exactly what I'm doing right now, tell the story and then have a little sharing around it. And I just love it. I'm passionate about it. I'm also passionate about Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and the stories she collected in her book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. And so because I just love those deep, moving soul stories. So I just absolutely adore her, and these stories fit my temperament. Now, a little warning, I'm a very kinesthetic person, so I have to move. I can't really sit telling stories. So I hope I'm not moving out of the frame or moving too fast. Okay, so let me give you my favorite story, a story that touches me deeply and is very, very meaningful in my life. And you may have heard it in different versions. This is Soul Skin or Seal Woman. Let me take you to a land where the skies are wide and open, and I have the color of milk, and underneath the landscape matches the whiteness from above. Snowy, snowy landscape as far as the eye can see. And sometimes in the horizon, you can see little specks of bear, of seal, of hunter. And the people who live in this climate, they have to keep their anoraks closed up, zipped up for most of the year. And they say sometimes when a speaker speaks, the words can freeze mid-sentence. It is that cold. But the people who live in this harsh and unforgiving climate, they say, oh no, oh, we are blessed. We live in the white, white hair of Analuk, the grandmother of all, the goddess who provides for us so beautifully. We are really lucky. And it is in this climate that we meet a young man, a hunter. And this hunter has been on many expeditions, and he has been very, very lonely. So lonely that if you get close to his face, you can see that the tears he had cried have left two big chasms, carved big chasms into his cheeks. He longs for human contact, especially of the female kind. And sometimes when he's out there in his kayak all by himself on the ocean, he can see a seal swims by. And then he's reminded of the stories of the old people who say seals were humans once. And if you look into their eyes, you can see they're full of wisdom and compassion and love. Now, one time, our young man had hunted way past darkness. And so he was out there in his little canoe, out on the ocean, and icicles swimming around him. and it was very still, and he was very alone. And then to his right, the full moon was rising. And then it turned everything into a beautiful silver sparkling landscape. And the hunter was so mesmerized that he sat there, even though he had seen it many a times. But he took in this beautiful, beautiful scenery around him. And he sat very still in his canoe. Suddenly he heard something like a singing or laughter or cackling. What was that? And then he slowly moved in his canoe. He drove his canoe, paddled his canoe closer to where the noise was. And he came closer and closer, and he could hear now much clearer. It was singing, it was laughing. And then suddenly, close enough, he saw a big, big white rock coming out of the ocean. And the rock had dark spots. And on the rock, he saw the most amazing sight. He has never seen anything like it. And his heart started to beat really, really fast. Because on the rock were women, beautiful young women, dancing graciously in the moonlight, naked. And their skins, their naked skins, looked like white velvet. And they were singing and humming and taking in the beauty of the full moon. The hunter was crouching next to the rock. And then, in a moment of boldness, later he could not say what it really was that got him out of his canoe, stepping up, crouching behind the shady part of the rock, watching the women now close by. And when he looked down, he saw seal skins laid out right in front of him on that rock. And again, in a moment of boldness, he grabbed one of the skins and hid it under his anorak, still crouching low so the women couldn't see him. And he watched their beautiful bodies with long limbs moving graciously. And they were just so absorbed with each other and the beauty of the full moonlight. And then came a sound from over the waves. It was like a hypnotic chant. Ooh, ooh. And they stopped in their movements. And one by one, they stepped back and put on their sealskins, slipping into their sealskins until they were there, back in the sealskin, moving to the edge of the rock, diving into the water, disappearing in the deep, deep underwater world. One by one, they stepped and dived, except for one. I know, I had it here. My skin, where's my skin? I put it here, I know, sis. But all the sisters had gone. And there she was, all by herself, naked, standing on the rock, and no sealskin. Her skin was gone. Oh no, what shall I do? Meanwhile, the hunter, still clutching her skin to his chest, jumped up. Woman, I am a lonely man. Please be my wife. Oh no, I can't be wife. I'm Temek from the one beneath. I can't be wife. Be my wife, come with me. And after 7 summers, you shall decide whether you stay with me or whether you want to return to your world. 7 summers. And she could see, Seal Woman could see in the eyes of the hunter, his desperation, his sadness. And so she said, after 7 summers, I need to have it back. And very well, I will come with you. And with that, she stepped into his little canoe and they paddled to the shore where on top of the cliff, his little hut stood. It turned out that our hunter was a very loving and caring man. And he was amazing, amazing provider. And so they lived quite happily in a way. And within a year, they had a child, a little son called Oruk. Now, Oruk was a chubby, spirited little boy, very, very sweet. And his mother, Seal woman, loved him absolutely, totally, absolutely adored her boy. But most of all, she made sure that Oruk knew all the creatures of her underwater world. And each night when she tucked him in, she told him stories of whale and dolphin and crab. And sometimes on a very beautiful, starry, clear night, she opened the little fire flap and pointed to the star constellations. Now, Oruk, tell me, show me, dolphin, walrus, whale, show me, crab and lobster. And little Oruk knew all these creatures by heart. So the years passed by and they lived quite happily, the little family. But then Seal woman, one day she discovered that her skin that was once beautiful, dark and oily was now gray and flaky and very thin, and it flaked off her. And even the skin on her eyelids became flaky and brittle and fell off. But most concerning, more than anything else, was that her eyes that were once sharp and dark, now were dimmed, and she could hardly see. She could hardly see. Everything was much, much darker and gray around her. And the hair that once shone in the beautiful full moon night when she was there dancing with her sisters on the rock, it was now thin, brittle, and fell out. She also noticed a pain in her hip and started to walk with a limp. The pain was unbearable. And one night, when Oruk was tucked into his bed, and he was just about to fall asleep, and I'm sure he had heard all the stories again. He was just about to fall asleep. He heard the booming voice of his father next door, and the quivering, almost pleading, almost crying voice of his mother. And he sat up, startled. He had never, ever heard his parents shouting like that, arguing. What is it? What's happening? Woman, I can't. I will not give it to you. If I give it to you, you will leave me. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. All I know is that I need to have back what I am made of, what I belong to. I can't, because you will leave me a wifeless husband, and worse than that, you will leave your son Oruk, a motherless child. How can you even think that? How can you even want it? And with that, the hunter, in his anger, clutched the sealskin to his chest, turned around, and walked out of the hut, walked away into the cold, starry night. Seal woman stood, shocked, and she didn't know what to do. And after a while, she started to cry. That was all she could do. And Oruk in his bed next door, he sat, and he could feel his mother's pain. He could feel her longing, her desperation. But what could he do? He didn't know what to do. So he too just started to cry. So they were crying. And after a while, Oruk got so tired that he fell asleep a little bit. He was still sitting in his bed, but he was falling asleep. He was so exhausted. And then he heard a noise like, oh. He woke up again. What is it? That's the wind. That's the wind around the hut. I can hear it very clearly. Oh, that sounds like my name. It's the wind calling me. It's the wind calling my name. Oh. And then he thought, yes, the wind is calling me. Oh my God, really? And then he got out of his little bed and walked to the little flap that opened his room to the outside world in the hut. And there he stood. He stood on that cliff. And he saw a moon rising, and a beautiful full moon night came over him. And he looked and stood, and he heard it again. Oruk, now much louder. Oruk. And he looked over the water beneath him. Looked, he couldn't see anything. But then, yes, there's something that's poking out of the water. What is that? And then he saw a big white seal head coming out of the water with yellow eyes, huge yellow eyes, whiskers down to his chest. Oh, clearly it came from the big seal. Oh my God, he's calling me. The seal is calling me. What does he want? And Oruk stood at the edge of the cliff. And then he started walking down. And then he started running. And he ran. He fell over something. Almost fell. There was something in his way, in his path. And he picked it up. Oh no, it wasn't a rock. No rock, but something soft. And he opened it in the moonlight and he could see. It was a seal skin. It was a seal skin. And he held it to his nose. Inhaled deep, and he could smell his mother's scent. And another one. And like a shudder, his mother's soul came into his body. Oh, and he looked over the water with the big seal was just diving back down into the dark water and was gone. So Oruk stood there with his mother's sealskin and didn't know quite what to do. What shall I do? What shall I do? But then he folded it and held it close to his heart, turned around and ran up that cliff, came back to the house, came in through the skin right in front of his mother. Oh, you brought it back. Oh, Oruk. And she picked up her skin and grabbed Oruk and pressed both close to her heart. Ever so grateful for the safe return. Oh, thank you, Oruk. And then she laid that sealskin right out in front of her. And with one foot, she stepped in. Mother, what are you doing? What? You're not leaving me. Oruk became suddenly really alarmed. But his mother couldn't hear him. And she stepped in with the other foot. She stepped in and slowly pulled up the sealskin. Mother, please don't leave me. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Finally, she turned. Oh, Oruk, this is much stronger and much older than you and I. And she put on her sealskin and slipped in, and it fitted perfectly. Here she was, standing in her old skin, and she could feel the pulsation in her body, an energy coming in, becoming alive. But she also looked at her son, my son, her son she loved with every cell of her body. What can I do? What can I do? I love Oruk. Then she grabbed his hand, opened the flap, and both this time ran down in the full moonlight, ran down the cliff, ran right to the shore, stopped at the water's edge, feeling their feet cooled by the water. And there she stood, seal woman with Oruk, looking over the water, looking. And she could feel the longing, every fiber of her being. She just wanted to jump back in. But what about Oruk? What about her child? Can she leave him? What can she do? And so she had to make a decision. She had to decide. So she took a deep breath and then pressed her lips onto his. Was blowing her breath into his body. And again. And one more time. Then she took her son by the hand, walked even closer into the water, and then jumped and dived into the cold, dark water. And Oruk, right next to her, swimming. And first they couldn't see anything. It was very, very dark and muddy. And they were looking and swimming, and she could feel him right there next to her. He was swimming with her in the underwater world. And then in the distance, they saw a little light. And they were swimming to that light, swimming to the light. And the light became bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it was an entrance of a cave. And they swam right through it. And there they were greeted by the most amazing sight. Amazing, huge table and lights everywhere. And around the table were all of Seal Woman's sisters who once stood with her on the rock. They were all sitting there, telling stories, eating, laughing, singing. And also all the other creatures Oruk knows so well of the underwater world, were all sitting there feasting. And at the head of the table, yes, who was sitting there? I know, you know. Yeah. The big white seal with the yellow eyes and whiskers down to his chest. He was sitting at the head of the table. And he came and swam towards Seal Woman and said, "My daughter, you have come. Oh, you have come, and you brought my grandson Oruk." And he hugged them both tightly to his chest. "I am so happy you are here. Come, feast with us. Feast, sing, be here." And so they did. The whole night was a most beautiful feast. And they told all the stories and sang all the old songs and had such joy reuniting with each other. But at the end of the night, the big father seal swam back to his daughter and he said, "My daughter, tell me, how have you fared there in the world of the humans?" Oh, father, right now I'm hurting a human, I know, and he has been a good man. He is a good man, but I can't return because if I would, it would be like being in prison. I can't do it. Very well, my daughter, very well. But what about your son? What about Oruk? His time hasn't come. And after 7 days, I will return him to his father. After 7 days. And so, Oruk and his mother enjoyed amazing 7 days in the underwater world. And she showed him every little thing he needed to know. And he knew already somehow through her stories. And they swam, and he noticed that his mother's eyes became sharp and black again, really sharp. And her skin that was once oily was oily again, and it was beautiful, dark and plump. And she swam unhindered, freely moving, gently moving in the waters. But the 7th day had come. So Seal Woman and the big father seal put Oruk in the middle, into their middle, and they swam up back to the world of the humans, and they swam through the darkness and the layers of the water until they could see some light trickling through the water. And then they were out, taking a breath of that beautiful, cold, snowy air. And then gently, Seal Woman and Father Seal were guiding Uruk to the edge of the shore, back onto the sand where he stood 7 days ago and where he jumped 7 days ago with his mother into the water. And Seal Woman said, "My son, do not be afraid. I will always be with you, always. And if you want me near, all you need to do is touch the things I touched. My little ulu, my little carving knife. Yes, and the figurines I made of seal and whale and dolphin. All my jewelry, just touch it and I'll be there. I will always be near, please." And with that, she hugged him one more time, and Father Seal came and hugged Uruk as well. And they held an embrace for quite some time, really close. But then it was time for them to say goodbye and swim away, swim away. And Uruk stood and he looked over the ocean and he could see his mother disappearing and his grandfather too. And for a long time he stood and looked over the ocean. But then it was time to turn around, walk up that cliff and go back to his father's hut. Now I know you want to know what happened. What happened to Uruk? I can tell you that he grew into a beautiful, strong young man. He actually became the drummer of his tribe. And he became also a mighty good storyteller. You know, he was telling stories, unbelievable stories of the underwater world. He claimed that he had been there, really, and that he had met all these creatures. And the people say that in a particular beautiful full moon night, they have noticed something strange going on around a particular white rock with dark spots. And they say that they have sighted a young man in his kayak, and around him swimming a seal swimming. And they seem to talk with each other or sing or laugh. And it goes on the whole night. And they say too that this seal is a female seal. And a lot of young hunters, very good hunters, have tried to kill her, but nobody could ever kill her. Because the old people say, she is Tanquequip, the blessed one. She is sacred. She's a sacred seal. And if you ever happen to come close enough to her and look into her eyes, you can see they're full of wisdom, of compassion and love, just like a human. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I would like to, or maybe here first, but I have 2 quotes from Clarissa's book I like to add to the story, but I'd like to hear first some commentary.
I have heard that story before, but I have to say, with such expression, and I love the movement, and you've made it your own. So even though I knew the story, I got caught up and forgot I knew the story and was in the story. So that to me is the best kind of telling, when you're not, oh, I know what's coming next. You forget that and then you're there. And I have to say, you really do embody it with your body. That dancing, oh my God, I could see those women, there was all naked ladies, and I'm like, oh my God, this is X-rated. Okay, but yes, so thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it was wonderful listening, and you created an impact with your impressions and your beautiful expressions. Thank you. Nice hearing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, this is Chris in Minnesota.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, it's so lovely. It's so lovely. I had a very angry mother, and so I have not had access to this ideal mother hardly at all. I feel grief listening to your story
Yeah.
because I know she
Thank
exists.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm Maria, and I was
Hi, Maria.
Hello. I was enthralled with as the other person said, your embodiment of the story. I think Clarissa Pinkola Estes would be very happy if she could see you. So thank you for that huge gift you gave me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll go
me.
next.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Nilguen, it was such a beautiful experience, and the imagery was perfect. I could see each and everything happening in front of me through you and your words. It was a picture that was just moving. And when you said that the words froze, it was so cool. I actually felt it. I really felt that moment. Oh, it was beautiful. Thank you so much for this gift. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I do learn the stories from Pinkola, because her language is so amazing. Her language is just, I mean, of course, I put my own wording in it as well, and I make it my own story. That's why actually, but I really learn these stories, like the red shoes and all these stories from her. I have in my repertoire Skeleton Woman and all of them, and I become them. Of course, I really like to feel them in my body, and of course, it's very limited with Zoom. I wish I wish you could see my whole body, and I could move more. But I love her words. They are so passionate and potent and so descriptive. And that's why I really make an effort to learn her stories.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm in Pennsylvania in the US currently, and I just wanted to share
I can't hear.
Oh, you can't? Oh, sorry. This way. Can you hear me with this?
Better.
Yes, I can. I can. Oh, yeah, you've got some stars behind you. Yeah.
Hi,
Christine.
I'm Kristen.
Hello.
US. Hi, and I just wanted to share, not only did you embody it, it was the depth of, you can tell how very much you love this story. And your love of the story just so completely shone through in how you moved. And recognizing with Zoom, we can use our bodies. Maybe we don't see the whole body, but we can give, I've even seen tellers sit and just with their hands almost become part of the story. So I really loved how you full on, not only with your voice was so embodying the story as well, and your eyes when you would use the camera and come in close, and we could see the depth of your just fully being in the story, not only in the movement. Do you know what I mean? There's a difference. A person can use their body and feel quite disconnected from the story. And because you love it so much, it was such a full experience. So thank you for letting me share that with you.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Now,
Beautiful.
Nilguen, we have half an hour. So I'm wondering,
still half an hour left.
Yes. So I'm wondering how we can explore the meaning of the story and how it could have meaning and it could have application to each of our lives. I mean, this is a very exotic, unusual situation. The lady who is a seal, and the man takes away her seal skin and she comes and lives with him. But how does this connect to ordinary human experience? I'm wondering if maybe we should write about it or if we should go into breakout rooms, but how do you connect with this story? I mean, in human terms, what does this story mean?
Okay, let me just, Eric, can I just read the quotes because they are leading into that a little bit. And it means on many levels a lot to me. But so the first quote I want to read out is from Clarissa. And it says, "We lose the soul skin by becoming too involved with ego, by being too exacting, perfectionistic, or unnecessarily martyred, or driven by blind ambition, or by being dissatisfied about self, family, community, culture, world, and not saying or doing anything about it, or by pretending we are an unending source for others, or by not doing all we can to help ourselves. Oh, there are as many ways out there. There's many ways to lose the soul skins as there are women in this world." So, personally, I just like to share a little story around this and why this story is so important. And it was my first story I chose when I started off as a storyteller. I worked in a hospice in Christchurch, and I also was, people know about the earthquake in Christchurch in 2011, and it's the 10-year anniversary is coming up next weekend. And I was in the worst building possible. I was in the 6-story house that came down, and I was on the top level. There was a counseling outlet, and I crashed down and came out with a little wound on my knee. But I was still standing in the earthquake, and 115 people under me were buried. They died. And so a miracle, absolute miracle, that I came out with my colleagues out of a little hall, and the whole house had crashed down to 1 meter of ground. So all the other levels were squashed, and I walked out 10 years ago. And so, of course, I had this question, this burning question every survivor has. Now, why? Why have I survived? Why are all these people dead? And I'm allowed to live. What can I do with my life? What do I need to do? And I'm a spiritual person, so I asked my angels and my guides, and I was walking around the crater rim where I live, and I asked, and they said, work and help the people to move over into spirit world, hospice. So I went to the hospice and I said, here I am, I'm ready to work for you. And then I started working in the hospice, and my body was constantly and immediately giving me hell. It was burning. My skin was burning. This is interesting, isn't it? Soul skin. My skin was burning, and my feet were hot. And I had all these neurological kind of weird things happening in my body. No doctor could find out what it was. And yes, indeed, you guessed it. It was, and it took me as a therapist, interestingly, 7 years to surrender to the fact that this was post-traumatic stress disorder in my body. My body had held that moment when I was riding down the house, locking in my legs and holding on to dear life. But actually, there was a part of me that was behind me standing there saying, oh, this is how you're going to die. Very, almost like a commentary. Oh, this is how you're going to die. Interesting. I thought you would live up to 96, but not. Well, yeah, this is not survivable. And so, coming back to Clarissa's story, when the part where she looks at her skin becoming brittle and flaking off her, the skin, the very essence of her, holding her soul, I suddenly realized, wow, this was me, because it got so bad. It got so bad every day, just burning. I was sitting with 6 clients, and I was being beautiful at people's deathbeds and holding their hands and singing to them or telling stories, a lot of stories, when you work in the hospice, also hearing their stories. But my body was burning, and so I had to get out. And there's a part in her book that talks about what happens to us when we are overstaying. That means in a relationship, when we are overstaying in a job. And I overstayed, and what happened to me was very painful. Luckily, I could, I used a lot of therapy as well, of course. I could, could recover from these feelings. But I have seen and noticed for many people when they overstay and hold on to the familiar and refuse to go and risk. So that's one aspect of the story that has personally touched me. And I'm happy. I don't know how many are actually watching. I'm happy to go with the big forum, big group. You were asking whether we should go into smaller ones, but I'm happy to stay with the group.
But maybe we can just write for a few minutes, staying in the big group, but each one of us write for a few minutes about how this might apply to us. Because, to think about this, we have to go inside of ourselves. So we're thinking about a time in our lives or a situation where we were living, but somehow it didn't fit.
And we had to face,
Our skin was drying out.
Or becoming too small.
Becoming too tight, becoming too small, becoming too dry. And then the question of what to do.
And not just that, to decide and to in a situation where it's very difficult, like what to do that, when a child is involved, for instance. So those crossroads we come into in our lives, and what has been your experience if you have stood there and you knew with all the fiber of your being that you needed to make a jump back into the world, into a place that is more familiar and really home. Yeah, so maybe that's a good idea to go into those little.
So what did the SEAL woman do in relation to her son? Did she work out some sort of compromise, or what?
Yeah, well, she in a way, because she gave him her breath. She was breathing in so he could sustain being in the underwater world, because he was a half. He was half steel, half human, and he could be with her for these 7 days. But she returned him back to the father's hut. But she stayed connected and gave him basically an immense wisdom and these amazing stories he could later tell in his tribe. But so she had to compromise, and she had to let go of him. She knew he couldn't be with her forever in her world. So that was what she needed to do, and she needed to decide for herself, because otherwise she would have died, or a big part of her would have died, her soul, the essence of her wild nature. And Clarissa is always looking at the wild, true, authentic nature of us. And if we are not, if we are kind of getting off track and abandoning our wild, true nature, we die. And there's a beautiful saying, Clarissa says, without wild woman, we die. Without us, wild woman dies. And so, so she has to compromise and has to decide to go into the water, back to her nature, back to her own true self. That's what it is, I think. So we could, maybe it would be interesting to hear if you have stories or situations where you had to make a decision to be true to yourself, in spite of the sacrifices, or in spite of everyone else saying, don't do it. I
Well,
usually, when I tell the
mm.
story with this big audience, I usually stop where Seal Woman stands at the shore, and I ask, I say, so what would you do? What would you do in this situation?
Well, I think that this period of time with the pandemic is very challenging us on our own skin and our own habits and our own ideas of life into a completely different place, and us. And what does it mean, and what do we really need? And do we need our skin
Yeah,
or not?
yeah,
Is that something that is necessary, or maybe, and as human we adjust with new skin apparently, because we all are, we're still here.
yeah.
And even Zoom is a kind of a skin. So I would relate to it to our days, the situation we're all in. So.
We are. That's true. Thank you so much. That's a really good comment. Yeah, yeah. I forget it a little bit because New Zealand is so different to the world, because we have a totally normal life here and go to festivals and have, be out and about. I sometimes forget how it is in the rest of the world, how Corona is still very present. Yeah. Someone else, maybe, is there anyone else who likes to share a little bit around maybe an experience you had in your life where you had to follow your true self, where you had to make a decision that was hard, possibly?
Well, for a number of years, I was living in New York, which was my home, and I wanted to come to India,
Yeah.
but I didn't have the money. The situation wasn't right. Maybe I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do, but I was miserable. And I was making a living with a video camera, documenting performances. And I remember I would dread it when I would get phone calls asking for me to work. When you're in business and you don't want to get jobs, you're in the wrong business. So I had a lot of depression because I knew I wasn't happy there. I didn't know how really I was going to get back involved with theater or creativity, because I was just documenting other people's performances. And I had a long stretch there where I was really unhappy and unclear, and feeling I was not fulfilling my potential.
Yeah.
And fortunately, eventually, I managed to come to India, and it agreed with me. And I only started teaching, really. Well, I taught a little bit in the USA at colleges, but I only started teaching about storytelling, really, in India.
Wow.
So yeah, so my dead skin, or my tight skin, or my dry skin was living back in New York when it
And
was.
Eric, what it also tells me is, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Thank you. What it also tells me a bit is that we do know that there's a part in us that knows, because you were saying, I got depressed and I felt, something wasn't working here for me. Something was not right. And that's something, that we feel it, because it's like a little thorn, that pushes from within. And the other wording you used is, I wasn't living my potential. That's another one. I wasn't really living what I feel from my soul. I had subscribed to, in my life, subscribed. And like when I was a little girl, I was 4 or something, my mother asked me, what would you like to be, Nilguen, one day? And I said, I will live in a gypsy caravan and be an actress. And so she asked again when I was a little older, and she said, what do you really want to be, Nilguen? And I said, oh, I will be an actress and live in a gypsy caravan. And And so
Well, and
when
you've
I
done
was in my
it.
20s, that's exactly
But you've achieved it.
done it. I
It's-
achieved it already in my 20s in Germany, but then
Ah.
I gave it up and I came to New Zealand.
Ah.
Interesting. I thought, well, I'm 30. I'm a social worker, you know, probably the theater with language is a little bit difficult to begin with. So I put the theater person, the person who loves drama and performing, I put her in the corner, really far away from me for a long time, for almost 35 years. Can you imagine? And I pushed the helper, the good person, the therapist, the helping professional into the front. I'm always somehow satisfied the performer part of me by singing in choirs, a lot of choir singing. But it had to come to crunch point for me, like, as I said, with my skin burning and my health going down really fast, that I came into this, you know, when crisis is so strong that you feel like something needs to give, something needs to happen. I cannot stand this for one more second. I have to do something. And so this came. Why don't you dare it? Get yourself this caravan, this nice, beautiful gypsy caravan, and just go on the road and tell stories and see how that comes back into you. And like Seal Woman, stepping into her seal skin and feeling the energy rising, as soon as I tell a story or perform or something, I'm in a different space. My body feels light. I feel I'm 16 years old, you know, in terms of movement and everything. And I am alive. And I know that then I'm in alignment with my soul. And that's what I feel, I hear from you, Eric, that you doing what you're doing is in alignment with your soul.
But it often comes in a different form than what we expect.
Oh, yeah.
You see, I grew up going to the theater. You know, as a teenager, my whole life was studying Shakespeare and the USA playwrighs, Eugene O'Neill, Tennessee Williams, Arthur Miller, no relation. I thought I was going to be a playwright in the theater. But then I met Laura Sims, and I learned about storytelling. And so it shifted, and then I moved to India and it helped to begin this Storytelling Institute. But now I'm achieving what I wanted, which was to create my own stories and help other people create stories. But it's not in the Broadway theater. It's a different form. It's a different place.
Absolutely.
It's a different thing. So that's often what it is. I think we have our heart set on a particular situation, and we can't get it, and we struggle, we wait, and then if we persevere, somehow it comes up in a new form.
I think it was like that story we heard earlier where that little boy for his birthday was supposed to get the dog. I think as a human being, we really need to trust that just like the acorn that's planted and that it might grow a little crooked or whatever, the oak is going to be whatever the oak is, because that's what the oak is. And you will be, unless you get in your own way. Like, because for myself, I see how I live a story of me, or I live my life and let it unfold. When I let the story show up, then I'm trying to control and manipulate life. And the one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is you can't control life. It's a facade. The only person that ever well, I can't say the only person, the people around you can suffer too, because what happens is it's not, and I'm not talking about functionality. We all have to function, right? But I'm talking about the actual essence of life. Life is present and it's unfolding, and we either embrace it and are there with it, or we are this limited little box and we're trying to manipulate it into a round hole. And that's very uncomfortable, at least for myself, I found. So I'm trying to be like, you in that I'm trying to say, embrace this wherever it leads me.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Thank you so much. Are there some others who may want to share a little bit? I think we have got a few minutes left or 10 minutes left or
Yeah, 10
something.
minutes.
Yes. Your story is amazing, ma'am.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I
Kristen,
didn't.
go
We
ahead,
truly
Kristen.
involved in your story, the way you expressed it, the way you shared, move here and there. We
Yeah.
are not feeling like it is a story. It's a real movie-like thing.
But
And the way you express, yes, really.
but the
And
point
that
of
too on a
this
special day. Today is a Valentine's Day. We like your story very much.
But the point of this session is not that Nilguen is telling a great story, even though you told a great story beautifully. The point of this session is to see how it applies to our own lives.
Correct.
So, Kristen, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to share about it's so fascinating in life how there are so many layers to our journeys. So I've just started and sometimes things find us at other times in our lives. I've started studying narrative therapy the last 2 years. And it was so incredible that I was at a healing arts festival in southern Alberta, Canada, and hadn't heard, I don't even know how narrative therapy hadn't found me, because the woman I talked to, she said, "What are you doing here in southern Alberta?" And I said, "Oh, I'm on tour right now. I'm doing this recovery from trauma program called Steer Your Story. And it's about coming into the driver's seat of your own life, and trauma tells us a lie. It tells us all these stories about who we are, and yet we're all these other facets. So I'm doing this in service for people to sort of walk on a journey of reclaiming their truth." And she's like, "Oh, that sounds like narrative therapy." And I said, "Oh, what's that?" And then she started telling me, and it was like, I don't know if you've had this moment where all of a sudden you're given language. You're given language for something that you were doing, and now you've got the terminology, and you've got, oh my gosh, there's an entire field I had no idea. And that opening up of Eric, I hear so deeply too what you had shared about, these taking a certain path for a while. And I had been working at the World Bank. I still consult for them. I'm grateful for that work, but it's not my heart. It's not my heart at all. And narrative therapy, finding me through this woman that I met, and there's no coincidences, I don't feel either, like we were meant to meet each other. And I'm starting the master's on Monday at the University of Melbourne. And I'm so excited because it's like a 30-year journey finally happening. It's finally happening. I was doing that work back in the early 90s, but I had no idea that that's what it was. And had people telling me, "Well, that doesn't make sense. Like this work that you're trying to do, we don't know what that is." And now the universe is saying, "Oh, here you go. Here's some language." And just feeling so on fire and inspired again. So thank you for the story. And about shedding, the other thing that came to me is that idea of allowing ourselves to shed skins that sometimes it's reclaiming our skin, and sometimes it's both. It's that duality of shedding the skin that no longer serves, so we can step into the skin
Exactly.
that does. So thank you so much for just a beautiful telling and invitation to share. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. That's really beautiful. Yay, go narrative therapy. It's fantastic. That's good. Kaylin, you wanted to say something, is that right?
Yes. I just wanted to share my own experience in life that I think it resonates quite well with what you've told us so far. So I grew up practically with nothing. My parents struggled all their lives, and I liked theater a lot when I was in my teens. But in India, theater as a profession is really not a feasible profession to make money. At least 20 years ago, it was. So then I got into a corporate job, and then I moved up quite fast. I was good at what I did, and within about 7-8 years of me starting on my corporate life, I reached heights that I could never even imagine and dreamt of. I was making lots of money, getting everything I wanted, which I never had when I was a kid, taking care of my parents and everything. And then over a period of time, it started suddenly, it started as a niggle in the back, a little lower back pain, and then a lot of other things. The joints hurt. For a long time, I thought it was just physical, right? I'm working too hard. I used to work 80-hour weeks and all kinds of things, all day, all night. And then slowly, I also started to realize that my own interest in work seemed to fade. Over a period of time, I was almost at the senior management level. So then I moved to Bangalore from Chennai. I'm in Chennai. I hated the place. Bangalore is considered to be a very, very scenic and a cool, calm place to live compared to Chennai, but absolutely hated it. I hated my job. It felt like I was sitting in meetings all day and doing absolutely nothing useful. I was traveling all the time. So I had this discussion with my wife, and she was incredibly supportive. And she said, "If you hate it so much, why don't you just do something else?" And in India, at least, the fear of losing out is huge, especially when it comes to money, right? Money is what gives status. It gives us a certain amount of people see it as the way you're successful. And so it was incredibly hard for me to take that call to give up something where I was at heights that a lot of my own relatives could never reach. And then I said, no, I'm going to step away from that. So my wife and I, we came back to Chennai, started our own thing, a little bit of consultancy here and there. We do only absolutely what we want to do. We don't do what people want us to do. And we started on our own, and it worked well for a few years. It's been like 8-9 years now since we have been on our own, and they worked well. And more importantly, more than that, this pandemic, which has absolutely devastated millions of people all over the world, came as a blessing to me. What my wife teaches dance as part of other things. She has a dance school she runs, and when the pandemic started and everybody was locked down, and I thought, okay, let me do a bit of book reading for the kids. A lot of kids are sitting at home, so we started book reading sessions, and it caught up. The parents were so happy with it. They said, "Why don't you make it something formal?" And almost more than 20 years after I left theater, I came back and started doing theater again. This time I'm teaching it, of course. I'm not doing anything on my own. So I teach theater, drama, we do book reading. And as part of that, I do storytelling for the kids. Now, this is something which has given me the most satisfaction compared to my entire corporate life, all the money I made. And the feeling that I get when I'm actually sitting and researching stories. I spend hundreds of hours every month on this. I still work. I still consult. That's where I make money, of course, because this doesn't pay. But I'm happy to do this and happy to get involved and help at least the next generation get to a stage where they are ready to make their own choices. So as growing up, it's very tough to make these tough choices when you feel that you don't have a choice. You have to work. And then I had to take care of my parents. I had sisters growing up, and it's a thing that you are constantly moved in directions that you feel you have no control around, right? And I'm happy that I was able to get away from that. It's a very hard decision for most people. People said, well, at least they didn't say it to our face, but I'm sure they thought it, that we were being incredibly stupid to give up jobs like that and do something which wouldn't pay as much as we were earning back then. And but for me today, I think that was the best thing we did. Looking back, we got back to what we wanted to do. My wife was a dancer. She learned dance for many, many years, and then she gave it up to take up a corporate life. That's where we met. And then now she's back to dance. She started a dance school about 4 years ago. And so we do both, of course. We do our corporate consultancy work as well as I'm doing theater, she's doing dance. So it's amazing what we are able to achieve today compared to 10 years ago where we were extremely unhappy. when we were making money. So that's my story. And thank you for allowing me to share that.
Yeah, oh, fantastic, fantastic. And I think it's nicely summed up with when we feel there is no choice and we're living a choiceless life, we die inside, something in us goes kaput. And to find the way of choosing in spite and in spite of all of it, you know, and that's so beautiful. And I think someone else said here, you know, it's the return to the passion. When we feel the passion, as you describe it so beautifully, Karen, when we feel the passion in our body, in our veins, then I know, speak for myself, I know I'm on the right path. And no matter whether I earn I earn little money. I have basically no money. It's by koha, which means in New Zealand and Maori, it means a little donation people give me, and sometimes I give generously and sometimes not. But as long as I can put diesel in my little motorhome and fill the fridge that is very small, I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm happy. And like you, to feel that energy running through your veins and feeling so alive, that's it, isn't it? That's it. That's the reason to be alive on this planet for me. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Do we need to finish here, Eric? Or
Yes, yes,
can I finish with the last quote by
yes.
Pinkola by Larissa? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. By the way, I enjoy it very much. I would love to continue chatting. Yeah. So that's the last quote. In the tale, it is said that many try to hunt the soul, try to hunt the female seal, to capture and kill her, but no hunter is able. It is one more fairy tale reference to the indestructibility of the wild soul. Even if we have been working, sexing, resting, or playing out of cycle, it does not kill the wild woman. It only tires us out. I like that. It only tires us out. The good news is that we can make the necessary corrections and return to our own natural life once again. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.